Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and Prez. This is episode 458. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Prez, that is at _Presidente on Twitter and at Presidente on Blue Sky. Prez, how you doing?
It's very sad and dreary here in Washington, D.C., just like it is in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, weather sucks. Knicks suck right now, too. We'll talk about that. But before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements, especially that Strickland has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are, and you've not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merchandise which you can find on our website at www.strick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store, and there's all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host in front of the Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you get access to the Strickland Discord with the conversation never stops. There for the tier, $89 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod, or a random rave with the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Marino, one of the best in the business, and you get access to Strictly NFL, which you guessed is a podcast about the NFL that is hosted by Constantine Machkos and Desmond Novak. There for the tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. That's with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on a pod, recording some merchandise discounts, and even potentially hosting a podcast alongside yours truly when doing. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, none of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch games as they happen with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. So the Knicks lost last night. That is their sixth loss last 9 games. They dropped a game to the Wolves 116-99. I did the post game last night, so I shared my thoughts on what I think was wrong. I had a couple people tell me in my mentions that the Knicks did switch and they did try different things. I kind of agree, but I think the problem is they're making adjustments too late, and then when they make adjustments, they're not on the same page, and the adjustments they're making are not cohesive in their totality. And by that, I mean, like yesterday, they did pre-rotate on a switch late in the game on a pick and roll. They put OG. They were able to switch OG onto Anthony Edwards, and then Brunson switched onto Randall. They posted Randall to take advantage of that mismatch. So good job. Good. You pre-rotated. You got them to try post up for Randall rather than have Anthony Edwards just cook in an ISO or against drop coverage. The problem is if you do that and then your weak side help is still unnecessarily cheating down and ineffectively cheating down, and you're leaving easy passes to wide open shooters on the weak side, and the help that you do send to the ball is telegraphed and not actually putting pressure on the opponent, the result is still negative, and it is still not good, and it's still not a very cohesive and aligned defensive structure, at least in terms of how the players are executing it. So it's a lot of things. It's not just that they're not adjusting, it's that the adjustments don't seem to be totally fit together in all of your principles. Like if you are changing how you defend a pick and roll, it may also require you to change how your help defense is organized and where your rotations come from and who's responsible for what. And that is where the Knicks are really falling apart throughout, is their inability to adjust, how long it is taking them to make adjustments in the first place. So that's my main takeaway from that game, and really from this stretch we've seen recently, is the lack of adjustments, the inability to adjust. And then obviously, look, it has to be said, because we can't just say, oh, it's all about adjustments. Players themselves have to play better. We've all talked about it. OG has not been in a great place defensively for a little while now. Thought he was better yesterday, but still not his best form. Mikal has to be better. Josh Hart has to be better. Deuce McBride has to be better. Like, even your weaker defenders, right? Jalen Brunson. Like, I understand some of the stuff you're going to struggle with on ball. Got to be sharper off of it. He talked about it himself after the game. And he clearly got that message at halftime. I'll tell you that, because he came out at the start of the second half and he was really on his shit. So they know that too. I mean, your percenters have to be better, right? Cat, put your hand up when you're even in drop coverage. I know you suck in drop coverage anyway, but at least put your hand up. Precious Sims, be better at what you're doing. But again, it's like all this is all tied together. Guys and players need to be better. Coach needs to be able to use them better. They need to get on the same page, and that's a responsibility that falls on all of them. But yeah, that's more or less what I thought about the game yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, we were already behind the 8 ball with Towns out. I know we have talent aside from Towns, but he's just as important as Brunson is, if not more important in many ways. So the Wolves are not a pushover. They've had their own struggles. Anthony Edwards famously said the other day that their starting five sucks, or something like that. They are a team that is also playing they're playing less than the sum of their parts, not unlike the Knicks. They still hang their hat on defense, but they haven't really been able to figure out their offense. But facing a Knicks defense that is struggling, that certainly helped them. You would think that a Knicks defensively, the Knicks replacing Cat with Sims and Precious minutes would actually be an upgrade defensively, right? Because those guys they're just generally better, even though they're smaller than Cat on defense. They're probably worse rebounders, though, so there's a bit of a trade-off there. They're both also undersized versus a large front court of Rudy, Julius, Jaden, and Naz Reid. So in that sense, it was also a favorable matchup in terms of interior. I know we're gonna, the 3-point shooting was rightfully the focus of many people, right? We left a lot of people open, and then on top of that, like, they just cashed a lot of shots, right? Like, I don't care how open you leave Naz Reid. Like, you don't expect Naz Reid to. He's a really good shooter, but you just don't expect him to go 6 for 6 on, almost entirely shots several steps beyond the 3-point line. So, to your point, you mentioned that it was a bit of everything that went wrong. Execution, questionable adjustments. It was also a really good shooting night. I know nobody wants to hear that shit, but like, because it's happened so often, right? Malik Beasley, Kobe White, like, how many motherfuckers are gonna have a good shooting night versus the Knicks? That's kind of how it goes in the NBA in 2025. Offenses are better than ever historically across the league. Role players are better than ever historically across the league. Every team has random players ranging from role players to near stars who can go off on any given moment, so that if Julius has a bad game, there's always a chance that Dante or Naz Reid or can get hot from three. The thing is, the Wolves don't have many pitches, so to speak, aside from Anthony Edwards. So 3-point variance and aiming for that is pretty much their third option after Ant and Julius. So you got to kind of know that that's what they're going for, which is why it was kind of lame to see some of the adjustments both not working and just kind of failing in terms of help defense. And we'll get into some of them specifically, but it was kind of rough just to see. I'm really fucking tired of Precious Achua, my son, sadly. And him and Sims was better than Precious, but like, I where Nick Richards just got traded. There's words about Jonas being on the trade block, and Mitch is getting closer to returning. And personally, like, I'm just ready for, and we'll get to this as well. I'm just ready for like a large backup center. I these undersized centers like Precious and Sims defensively, they can have good results when they do everything right, but like there are certain matchups where they're undersized and there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do to stop a lob pass to Rudy Gobert or to really challenge um, you know, a big front court on the glass. So it's really frustrating. That's without getting to the Precious adventure on offense. So I definitely expect the Knicks to look towards that. And to your point about adjustments, it's one of those things where like if your undersized centers aren't doing it, you have to be able to try some other shit sometimes, right? Like go a possession or two with OG at the 5, right? Like put OG on Rudy Gobert. If you have Precious, you can put him on a perimeter defender, right? You can do different things. You don't have to stay in your base coverage. And Thibs tweaks, but the tweaks aren't really that substantial. And beyond the tweaks, some of the base stuff is just really questionable. You mentioned help defense and uh, the Knicks double teams being predictable. That's probably the most frustrating one to me. Is uh, they'll double before a player takes a dribble. Usually, you want to wait until a player dribbles before you double because then it becomes harder for him to survey and pass. And then the other thing that Knicks do constantly, and I don't know if this is scheme or execution, but they like rarely ever zone up. And I don't mean play zone. I mean like on the weak side, if there's 3 Knicks and 3 Wolves, each Knick will be pretty aligned with their respective opponent instead of what we see teams everywhere in the NBA do, especially against the Knicks, which is have 2 players defend 3 players and let a third player kind of roam and not quite double, but just be in the vicinity already, lurking, kind of just mucking shit up. Um, it's particularly jarring that we don't use OG like that, given his skills and his tendency. Like we use him as a help defender instead of a point of attack defender, which I think is smart, but we don't really zone up, which kind of restricts how he can be used as a help defender. So it's like you got to get the butter with the popcorn. It's like a half-ass adjustment schematically. So that's kind of annoying. Um, and then yeah, like guys just got to be better, right? Like McCall had a great defensive stretch earlier this season. He's had a rough go of it. Um, he's getting crossed up a lot by opponents who like to play with screens, reject screens, pretend they're going to go over the screen and then cross back. Anthony Edwards give him trouble. Anthony Edwards is really good. Cade is giving him trouble. Cade is really good. Guess what? That's the challenge. You gotta step up to it. OG. Many people have pointed out that he's looked a step slow. He's missed some dunks. He's gotten blown by a couple of times. He's made good defensive plays, of course, but like he is not operating right now at anywhere near 100%. I don't know if it's health wise or just being locked in or what, but there's some shit going on. So, with all that being said, like they just need to kind of recollect, regather um, on defense. Nobody expects them to be world beaters on defense, but like you got to at least be on the same page, and you got to at least come out executing with some level of force. And the last thing I'll say about the Wolves game is, the Knicks they kept trying to keep it close. They kept getting close, getting close. Then the Wolves would pull away a little bit. And watching the game, I was like, okay, honestly, like the Wolves are hitting everything. So like keep it close, keep it within 3 going into the fourth, and you'll be fine because the Wolves are terrible decision makers. And if you keep doing what you're doing and just improve it a little bit in the fourth, they're going to fall apart. They're not going to hit a bunch of threes in the fourth, and they're going to devolve into CTE ISO ball. But in reality, the script in my head was flipped, and the Wolves continued to execute, and the Knicks were the ones who fell apart execution wise in the fourth. I don't know what the fuck was going on in that quarter. And that was really jarring to see because the Wolves are like one of the dumber teams in terms of basketball. And if they're the one that has more resilience and fortitude than you in the fourth quarter at home, then you got some internal reflecting to do. So I don't know. It was between the hot shooting of the Wolves and the Knicks constantly just messing stuff up. It was just I wouldn't say it was as frustrating as the Detroit game, because on some level it was like, okay, all these guys are cashing shots, right? Like Jaden McDaniels is hitting mid-range shots, but it was still annoying in its own right.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't. I think it was less annoying because we've seen it before, so it's like, all right, well, this is what they are.
Yeah,
They don't.
especially without Cat.
They don't pay attention to detail. They don't. They don't. They're not playing to detail in any way. They help off the wrong shooters. They close out like fucking morons constantly. They close out to non-shooters like they're shooters. They leave shooters to close out to guys that you need to live with shooting threes. Like it's an endless stream of stupidity on defense lately. Like it is like nonstop. What's the dumbest fucking thing I can do right now? Oh, let me do that.
I was thinking about it, and like like you think about last year's team, which was executing on defense at least later in the year before all the injuries, and like you can chalk some of that up to having really good defensive centers, right? And iHeart and Mitch, but like it's not like the rest of the rotation was some superior defensive executing roster, right? Like it was Julius fucking Randle, it was Dante DiVincenzo, and OG and Brunson were still there, and like they were paying attention to detail. So and Hart, who actually Hart is like he's probably been the one who's been closest to locked in on defense lately. Um, so it was like you're telling me like this group of 6 or 7 players, especially on the perimeter and from help, are that much. It's like night and day from last year when it shouldn't be, right? Because like again, like when you're talking about help rotations and stuff like that, it's not really the center. It's not often that we're like, oh my god, Sims didn't close out to the right shooter. It's the perimeter players, and it's like Hart and Brunson were the perimeter players successfully doing that last year, and Deuce and OG, and you have one less dumb perimeter player with no Randall, and you have McCall there. So like that tells me that it's not a matter of like it sounds like a cop out, but it's not like these guys can't do it. They're just not doing it, which is crazy to me.